Thank you for joining us. I know it's a slight short notice, but we felt like it was important to create a space and an opportunity to continue the conversation that we started on last Tuesday, a week ago today, regarding some critical updates on the OneNewark plan that we shared. And so Peter and I are going to walk through the same information we shared at the school advisory business meeting last Tuesday and answer any questions that you may have about any of the topics in the deck. So I'm going to hand it over to Peter to dive into our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. And again, let me also echo Vanessa's points and welcome you all here, especially on short notice. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us for the update. As many of you know by now, the OneNewark plan was introduced in the community last fall into the winter. And the purpose of today's presentation is to provide some update about the details of the plan. It also, however, is an opportunity to take a step back and remind us about the rationale behind the plan. The OneNewark plan in its core is developing a pathway to ensure that we have 100 excellent schools serving the community of Newark. But it's also a response to 4 significant challenges that we always need to revisit as we talk about our planning going forward. First, fiscal challenges that are on the horizon for Newark Public Schools that if we were to do nothing would create even more difficult decisions going forward. For example, present day, what we know, based on student choices and family choices, is that our enrollment continues to decline. As enrollment declines, those revenues go down as well. Going forward over the next 3 years, we're projecting our charter payment into the charter sector to balloon to $250 million. If we were to do nothing, the decisions we would need to make 2 to 3 years out are that much more challenging. So it's important to remember we're faced with a scenario where we have declining enrollment that's been going on for several years. It isn't just something that started this past September. Over the last 10 to 15 years, the overall enrollment in terms of the students that Newark Public Schools serves has declined from over 50,000 to below 37,000 going farther south. That's a reality that the OneNewark plan aims to address. Significant reality. Another significant challenge is the conditions of our facilities. Newark is blessed with old and beautiful buildings. That can also be a curse in terms of the upkeep required to ensure that all students across the city are being served in 21st century learning environments. What we know by recent assessments is if we were to do nothing at all in our buildings and just say we're going to bring them all up to 21st century learning environments, it would cost us over $1 billion, a $1 billion investment that we just don't believe is a realistic ask right now of the community, but also of the state. So we have significant issues around our facility challenges. We have declining enrollment, and there's been chronic low performance in Newark Public Schools going back some time. Present day, and over the last several administrations, for example, there is not one K-8 school serving the South Ward that has more than 30% of their students, on average, achieving proficiency in language arts. Think about that. An entire community in the city, over several administrations, lacks even one school that is breaking the 30% threshold of proficiency. This is why families are choosing with their feet and choosing options outside of certain communities. The OneNewark plan at its core is a strategy to position Newark Public Schools to better compete and to attract those families back to those communities so that those communities can continue to thrive and we can ensure that student achievement results will increase based on the strategies outlined in the OneNewark plan. In order to achieve the plan, we've been saying consistently now for some time, there are 7 bold steps that we need to take. And we're pleased to announce we've made progress on several of these. First and foremost, last fall, we introduced into the community family snapshots across traditional public schools and charter schools. For the first time in the city, families could look at OneMetrics to evaluate the performance of a school, whether it was a charter school, whether it was a Newark public school. We needed to have a common framework for talking about success in the city and not have one that served just the charter sector and one that served just the traditional public school sector. This is now launched, and we'll continue to revise this going forward. We've made great progress in this area. Second, the launch of a universal enrollment system. Pleased to say that is up and running. It's been in the community now for some time. We are coming up on the closing date, and we have upwards of 10,000 applications in place. Families are clearly engaged, and the idea of choice is not new to this community. What is new is the idea that Newark Public Schools is embracing that choice. And we're making great strides based on the numbers and the numbers of applications that have been completed by families to date. Third, I mentioned already the idea that we need to invest in 21st century learning environments. So the $1 billion number I referenced at the beginning of the presentation, while not realistic, doesn't mean that we've given up hope. Recently, as a result of the leadership of Superintendent Anderson, we've won a $100 million grant from the state that goes directly to Newark Public Schools. It doesn't get funneled through the School Development Authority, and gives us much more authority and accountability for how those funds will be invested in the schools. Those funds start to come online this fall and will be invested over the next 3 years to ensure that we are making progress on ensuring that our students are in 21st century learning environments. Fourth, we're going to talk more about the end of this presentation, and it's important to note, however, we have been referencing the need to right-size our district according to quality for some time now. This has been an essential part of the One Newark plan since its launch. This is not something that we haven't been talking about with transparency in the community. As with any difficult decisions, the idea that right-sizing means we're reducing our workforce, reducing the amount of schools Newark Public Schools can continue to operate, we need to ensure we're doing that in a way that's humane and provide supports for the adults and the families and the students that are most impacted by this. One of the reasons for announcing One Newark back in the fall and winter was to begin to position our community so that we can do 5 well. If we waited to the spring or even later into the summer, we would not have been able to talk and have candid conversations with the community about what the true needs are to do 5 well. So it's important that this becomes more part of our conversation going forward in partnership with the community. The ward-by-ward strategy is very real. Present day, 37% of families in the South Ward are opting out of that ward. Not far behind is the Central and Central and West wards as well. It's imperative that we bring and partner with programs that those families have been saying for some time now they want, and bring those programs back to those communities. Otherwise, we're faced again with a scenario where we're in 2 to 3 years having to shutter many, many school buildings. The One Newark plan is about preventing those decisions by making difficult decisions today. And the idea that we'll continue to grow the capacity of innovation in the district. For some, it might seem like a long time ago. It was only two short years ago when we launched our first Renew effort. And at the time, it was very controversial. Present day, many of those Renew schools are significantly different environments than they were 2 years ago. The enrollment in those Renew schools is also on the rise, and we're extremely pleased with the stability of leadership and teaching force in those schools. That's the result of a commitment to innovate, as are some other strategies that we're going to talk about in the update going forward. As I mentioned, the universal enrollment is closing shortly at the end of this week. We couldn't be more pleased with the number of applications submitted. Doesn't mean we're done. We're not over the finish line yet. And we're continuing to engage families on a daily basis, phone calls at every school to ensure all students that are in transition grades are completing an application. And families that indicate that they would like a different school for their child are welcome to do so as well. Here is an overview about some of the updates related to the One Newark plan, and as a result of intense community engagement over the last 2 months. So we initially introduced details about the One Newark plan into the community before the holidays, but then we remained engaged. Over 100 meetings were held throughout the city, a variety of different stakeholders. And as a result of those meetings and that feedback, the plan has been revised. Also, as a result of ongoing collaboration with the partners in the community, high-performing charters in particular, we're able to get greater detail of exactly what programs they will serve coming this fall. Specifically, here you can see at Alexander, North Star will launch a K-4 school in September. Burgaw, a team will be prepared to launch a K-4 school as well. It's important to note, all students PK4 to 3rd grade in those locations are able to stay in those environments and be served by those programs if they so choose. In Hawthorne, we have a K-4 option that will be brought online in partnership with BRIC, as well as team launching a K-1 school there as well. Newark Legacy's growth plan is partnered with Madison. And again, it's also important to note that the charters that are listed here are not only considered high-performing charters in the community, but their growth plans are already approved. Oftentimes, we talk about in the community that the One Newark plan is attempting to accelerate charter growth. There is no new growth decisions made here. These decisions are already approved. They're coming. One Newark is an attempt to accelerate that growth so that we can more quickly stabilize the Newark Public Schools enrollment and budget going forward. The Newton school community, the last one just to reference here, because of declining enrollment and because of significant facility needs, we were not able to find a scenario where it made sense for Newark Public Schools to continue to operate Newton going forward. Every student and family in this school community is highly preferenced in the universal enrollment system, as are the others as well, so that they will get their first, second choice going forward. On the high school side, it's important to note there are no closings. We are not closing any high schools in the city. And in fact, as a result of the feedback we've received over the last several weeks from the community, we've made some revisions to decisions. The original idea in December that was announced was that we would not continue to have a 9th grade at Weequahic going forward. Now we're committing for the next 2 years to welcome a 9th grade class into Weequahic going forward. A 2-year commitment and then reevaluate to ensure that there are reforms are taking place. We are also reciting Eagle and Girls Academy to Weequahic. The idea being families have already demonstrated that these new programs started by Newark Public Schools, not by charter schools, are very valuable in the community and are extremely desirable. But they weren't in the South Ward. It's an essential point of the One Newark plan. They were in other areas of the city. We need to bring these options to the South Ward, which is the rationale behind this decision. Other details are shared here. It's worth noting in central office 2 Cedar Street, where Newark Public Schools has been housed for some time now, the decision going forward is that this is not the best location fiscally or in terms of accessibility for the community for our central office services to be located in the city. And going forward, starting this September, we'll begin to phase in our offices into Newark Voc and ensure that we have greater accessibility in the community and families can access us as need be rather than having to come downtown into 2 Cedar Street. So it's also an important part of the decisions that are being shared today. At this point, we're going to do a deep dive on the retaining our best teacher strategy, and I'll hand it over to Vanessa. You got it.
Thank you. Sure. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So the number one factor in helping students achieve academically are their teachers. The teacher that stands in front of them makes the greatest impact on whether a student is successful in class or has a struggling time, right? So for us, retaining our best teachers at Newark Public Schools is the most important factor. We want to ensure that our best teachers are in front of our students every day. And we know currently that we have 3,200 teachers in Newark Public Schools, and last year, 20% of those teachers were rated partially effective or ineffective. So through the new framework that we instituted 2 years ago, we've been working with our principals, with our assistant principals, and together with assistant superintendents to ensure that we are consistently in classrooms, supporting teachers, helping them grow, but also ensuring that we understand where teachers are in terms of their development and how they're supporting students' development. So these ratings are based on that work that we've been doing over the last 2 years. So we know that we have to grapple with the budget currently. As Peter mentioned earlier, we have 7 main goals in our OneNewark plan. The fourth of those goals, I'm going to go back to that slide just to show you again, which we've been talking about since the early fall. Number 4, considering quality, that's the quality of the teacher, the effectiveness of the teacher, along with years of service while making decisions about right-sizing our workforce. What do we mean by that? So specifically what we mean is that as we look at our current fiscal crisis, as we look at the fact that there's an extreme decline in enrollment that has been happening now for decades, as Peter mentioned, we have to ensure that our staff matches the number of students that we are serving, that we have the right amount of teachers to serve the number of students that we currently have enrolled at Newark Public Schools, which means that we're facing a difficult decision to have to lay off teachers. It's a really, really hard place to be. And as we grapple with making that decision, we want to ensure that we do it by considering the quality of the teacher. We want to keep our best teachers in front of our students. We want to ensure that families get that, and they deserve that. They deserve the best teacher for their students. So as we consider laying off teachers, we have to ensure that we're doing it in a way that we feel is going to best serve our communities and best serve our students and families. So we would like to be able to retain our best teachers. So as we're thinking about how do you go about laying off teachers, we'd like to ensure that we have our best teachers at the forefront, which means that we would first look to consider looking at ineffective and partially effective teachers exiting before our effective and highly effective teachers. In order to do that, we had to apply for an equivalency, which means we seek from the commissioner an opportunity to redefine how we would implement a layoff process, meaning that it would consider both the quality of the teacher in the layoff as well as their years of service, which is new and different. But for us, we do believe it is the right thing to do and the best thing to do for our students. At this point, we have submitted the equivalency. We did this last Friday. Today's Tuesday. And it is at the state level at this point, and they are reviewing it. We are also looking at what we hope to plan for if in fact it is approved. So we have put this information out to the community at the last school advisory business meeting. We took feedback from community members and are hoping to answer any questions that you may have about that equivalency application and our process. In order to support giving you more detailed information, you're going to find on your seats a 3-page overview of what was included in our application. This will give you more details around what our current approach is and what our approach would be if the equivalency was approved. Right, I'm going to stop there and try to ensure that we have time for questions, both anything that Peter covered or anything about the equivalency. So, questions?
So what's the timeline? When do you expect to have a response in terms of the equivalency and then the turnaround to the teachers?
Well, clearly we know that this is a critical component to notifying teachers of their time in the district and what potential things they should be planning for. So we would like it to be as soon as possible. However, we need to respect that the state needs time to review the documentation, review the application. So at this point, we really don't know when we will hear back.
How are we defining quality with regards to the teacher quality?
It's a great question. So we are looking at 3 parts, 3 components to the definition. One is their evaluation, so how their performance in the classroom. 2 is their track record of attendance. Like, are they present? Are they a part of the school community on a regular basis? Are they there for their students? And 3 is, do they have a record around disciplinary action? Are they a teacher that's often receiving disciplinary, meetings and follow-up? So those are the 3 pieces that we are using to define quality in terms of making this decision. So,
And
thank
then
you.
just to add also, the quality is defined alongside seniority.
Correct.
So it's not that seniority isn't factored in at all. It is. If you were, for example, take the pool of ineffective teachers who may be laid off first in terms of order of priority, that seniority would still be considered alongside that. So.
My question is, how many teachers do you expect to be affected in total? And for teachers that were on the UPS list last year and weren't assigned to a classroom, what evaluation tool is being used for those teachers?
Great questions. So on the second part, let's start with that one, the EWPS. We've worked really hard this year, and actually last summer, we hosted a number of hiring fairs. We gave open transfer periods. We do believe in mutual consent. Mutual consent means that the principal will go out and recruit teachers and interview teachers, and teachers will go out and look at schools and see if that school is a good match to them. We know due to tons of research that when a teacher and a principal feel like it's a good match and there's good satisfaction there, the outcomes for students are that much greater. So we gave EWPS teachers every opportunity last year to make a match with a principal. Did that always happen? No. We do have a number of teachers who didn't find a match and are not and have been in that situation for more than 2 years. That's telling us a lot about how we need to address the quality that's there and how do we support them. So for us, we are then creating opportunities for them to still be in classrooms. It means that we have to force place them. It's not an ideal situation. It's not what we want. We want mutual consent. But in the end, we have to force place them. They are teachers. They are accountable for teaching. So we have placed them in teaching situations so that we can use the same observation tools, the same process of evaluating them as we would any other teacher in the district. I'm sorry, remind me of your first question again.
How many teachers will be affected?
Yes. Okay, so we currently have 3,200 teachers in the district. We're looking that over the next 3 years, we're going to need to reduce by 30%. So that would be close to 1,000 teachers that would be impacted.
This is more of a clarifying question with regard to the open enrollment and maximizing that. You said currently we have about 10,000 applications in, and we have about 36,000 students in Newark. So it's just not clear to me, factoring those who have applied and will apply by the deadline, factoring those who will choose to attend private or whatever have you, those who don't apply, the first thing is it mandatory that you apply via open enrollment, the application? And if it's not mandatory, those who choose not to apply, is it just default they will attend their neighborhood school, or what's happening with them?
And thank you for your question, the opportunity to clarify. And so first, no, it's not mandatory for all students in the district to apply. So it's important to just be very clear about that. The students that are in transition grades, so let's say, for example, Franklin School is a K-4 school. Those fourth graders, all of those fourth graders are required to apply. Students in 8th grade throughout the district are required to apply. PK4 students transitioning into kindergarten. So those are the only grades that are required to participate in universal enrollment, and then as well as other families who have indicated desire to have a transfer. Historically throughout the city, transfers and even registering at a school was always done at the school site. And so essentially what we're moving towards with universal enrollment is centralizing the enrollment process across the city. It's also worth noting that historically, families with students with special needs never had a choice in terms of where their child went to school. What would happen, they would they would come to 2 Cedar Street, and they would be placed in a certain program throughout the city. They're also being encouraged to apply and participate in universal enrollment so that they can also exercise choice for the first time. So I believe, did I answer you? I think you had a 2-part question, though. They stay. They stay. Yes, unless they're in one of the impacted schools, which then they would have to have applied, like in Newton I referenced earlier. But they stay. So if they're pleased with what they are, they don't need to do anything.
Will district level teachers and non-classroom teachers be affected by the waiver? And if so, what will be used to as the criteria, because they don't necessarily get evaluated?
All teachers, so currently all teachers in the district are being evaluated by our framework. So we will use the framework to do the evaluation and to institute this process. So that means if you're in a teacher title, all teachers who are currently using that title and teaching will be evaluated in that same way. So it's equitable.
And if I could make a plug out there in terms of community engagement. So if you're a teacher in the district right now and you're not getting evaluated, you need to speak up. If you're in the EWPS pool, you're not getting evaluated, you need to speak up. If you're in central office, you're not being evaluated, you need to speak up. So I wanted to deliver that message as clear as we can.
Thank you. And I saw a hand back here, and then I'll work my way back. How about that?
I just had a clarifying question to Michelle's question. The people who, the students who are required to apply and they don't, are what happens to them? So if you are like one of the students who are required to be placed and you don't fill out an application, where do you go?
The default will either be to your neighborhood geographic location. My understanding is also, though, after the application closes and matches are made, there may then be a second round, right? So then you can participate in the second round. The reason that is not to anyone's advantage is because once everyone's had their first, second, third choices, you're then left with fewer opportunities, right? So it's the reason it's been so imperative, the reason we extended the deadline from the middle of February to the end of February is to create more opportunity, because we saw so many families accessing the universal enrollment system. And so that's why these next few days are so critical. And we need all of you in this room, we need all of you who are viewing this video to communicate to members of the community that the universal enrollment system is an opportunity, and they should see that they have till Friday to access it.
I have 2 questions. The first question is on the matching that's done. How exactly is that happening? I know you can put into up to 8 choices, but say there's only 3 schools I'm interested at all. Am I guaranteed to get into one of those 3? Or is it, first come, first serve? If we fill up this school before we get to you, are they doing it in alphabetical order and we place the kids as we go? Like, how exactly is that matching happening?
So thank you for the question. First of all, it's not first come, first serve. It's important to note. So for example, if someone completes their application, while we wouldn't like this, if somebody wants to wait till Friday, even though it will cause us great anxiety, they can. If they complete that application Friday versus the person who completed their application January 15th, they're given the same priority. So no first come, first serve. The way the application is written and the way the algorithm is written is to consider 8 choices. It's not to your advantage to only give 3 choices. It's to everyone's advantage to ensure that they take 8 selections throughout that. Now, once they've done that, an algorithm is run, matches are made. It's important to also message into the community, this isn't the first time we've gone through this process. A year ago, the similar algorithm was used for the high school placements. And it's also important to note, if I could just for a minute, 2 years prior, was the first time we went to a common application for all the magnet high schools in the city. For those who have been in the community for some time, historically the high school application process at the magnet schools was run by the schools. It was confusing, complex, and consequently 30% of families throughout the city tried to participate. Consequently, every year for generations, we had seats unfilled in our best schools. That was changed 2 years ago through the common application process, when over 75% of families participated and said, I understand it now, I want in. So I hope did I answer all parts of your question?
Well, I guess I was just trying to figure out, when you said it's not to my advantage, but my son was in a private school. I'd love to bring it back to the district. But there's technically, just because of a number of reasons, there's probably only 3, maybe 4 that I did. So if he doesn't, that's what I'm trying to say when he said it's not to my advantage to do 8, if I choose the other 4, I'm just choosing the school that ends up there, then I don't want to. So then what?
Exactly. Well, so you would likely stay where you are, but we would ask you to please fill out the application, list your 3 or 4 options, whatever they might be, add the others, and we're hopeful that you'll get what you want. You should note, last year after the high school application process was matched, over 75% of families got their first 3 choices. Okay.
There's also, we also take into account siblings, so there's priority to put siblings in the same schools, and we define siblings as children who live under the same roof, right? As we know that there are guardian situations, and so we want to ensure that we create every opportunity to make it as holistic for families as possible and to make it easy, too.
Right, so the equivalency waiver, that's with the state, because all the questions so far is if it was approved. What if it's not approved? Does the district has a plan B in place for that?
Yeah, great question. And unfortunately, if it's not approved, we're still in the same fiscal crisis. We're still going to have to lay off teachers. It just means that we will have to lay off teachers only, not considering quality. And the impact that will have is that we will retain more ineffective and partially effective teachers, and we will have to let go of highly effective teachers and effective teachers. To us, that's just a really catastrophic impact on our students and their future.
Okay, so you mentioned that 2 Cedar Street was moving to North Vocational, because I know there's been talk in the hallways about the superintendent moving to the student center.
So no, entirely, yes. That means the entire central office, all staff, all departments would be moved together, not just one department here or one department there. It would be an entire central office move, and we would vacate the lease here at 2 Cedar. Correct. There would also be schools there, and the desire is also for our work to be closer to our students. And the idea of moving our central office into a building that houses some of our programs and has some of our students allows us to really be able to interact directly with the students we're serving every day. And so as we look at our options versus, walking and taking on another lease and being farther away from some of our programs and schools, we want to be closer to them.
So can you just clarify, she made a point earlier about her son being in a private school and doing the OneNewark application. That's been a point of contention at a lot of schools. There's some confusion as to whether or not they automatically have to take that seat. So because they get they get their first or second choice. Can you just offer a little bit of clarification around that, please, in terms of that action?
Sure. So after the application process is closed, the end of this week, a matching process has begun. And it's our expectation that by the middle of April, if not sooner, letters will go home to families, so that they'll have plenty of time before the end of the school year to make a determination about whether they accept the matches that they've been given. And then obviously there'll be an appeal process that will be followed as well for families that feel like maybe something was not done properly.
The idea is choice, right? We want to give parents as much choice as possible. They can choose to stay where they are, or they could choose to take a different, school seat, but it's still their choice, and so they will be the decider.
Going off of that, if so say they get placed in a location and then the parent or whatever decides that I don't want that, I don't want my student there, is there like a wait list or something for people who kind of come out to fill that seat?
So you're saying, so if someone gets a match, they choose to, let's say, go to a different school outside of Newark Public Schools, and that seat is vacated, then the next person, if it's still an during open enrollment, then yes, the next person or student who in the algorithm is next would get that seat. That's my understanding. Yeah, it would be backfilled, correct. So that it wouldn't just be left empty, in other words. Okay, so yes.
My question is, if we're talking over 3 years, declining enrollment, and laying off teachers, how does that affect central office staff? Will there be a reduction in staff for central office as well?
That's a good question. Last summer, as you know, we did do a layoff last summer of central office staff. And we have actually waited to touch schools because we know how important it is to have our schools fully staffed. And now the situation has changed, right, considerably with the continued decline in enrollment and the continued fiscal crisis, which means that we will also have to look at central staff this spring.
I have two questions. They're sort of related. One is, in the schools that are closing, where there may, well, I guess in the schools that are closing, if the parents do not complete the OneNewark Enrolls application, what will happen to them?
If they don't complete the application, if you're, for example, if you're a student who's at Newton, then the scenario is it's going to become a default. It'll become a default scenario to a geographic preference for those families. That's a scenario we want to avoid at all costs.
I understand that. I was just
also,
being
but
realistic.
it's also important to note Hawthorne is different in that sense. Because Brick is not a charter school, and again, one of the reasons this was an attractive model to us was to create some more diversity in the area. Families technically in PK4 to 3rd grade at Hawthorne now, they don't have to do anything. They will default to that program unless they choose out of that program. So that's an important point to note as well. But the students at Alexander, Burgaw, because those are charter launches, the law requires that they need to complete the application.
And are they guaranteed a spot in those schools?
Yes.
But they are still guaranteed a spot in those
100%.
schools. And if people don't, and I'm just, because I've been working at Newton trying to get parents to fill the applications.
I know there's some rumors, yes.
Right. But if they don't, when will they be told where they're placed? If for some reason.
My understanding, all the placements will happen in the middle of April.
Okay.
And I appreciate and thank you for your service at Newton. I think over the last 24 or 48 hours, we've started to make some progress and uncover some of the reasons people have been hesitant. And again, it's just the reason for doing this session again is continue to engage with the community to get the message out about what families' true options are. So thank you for that.
The slide brings to mind a point that you made earlier, and I wanted to find out, or to use the term, clarify for myself. When you say that the enrollments are going up, we're talking about the charter school enrollments that are going up, but the overall enrollment in Newark Public School as a portfolio of schools continues to be whatever it is, the 30,000, 40,000, whatever it is, right?
Declining to the 37,000 presently, going down.
No, I mean, in terms of the city of Newark, all of the students in the city of Newark.
Has stabilized.
That's stabilized.
It's important to note, over the last 2 years, the demographic in terms of families and the number of students served throughout the city has stabilized, which for me, I don't want to steal your question. Why don't you ask your question before I answer?
That leads to the next question, which is, as per the decision for the opening of charters being made at the state level, the governor, authorizes which charters are going to be open. Being that Newark doesn't have any control over that, the scenario being that the schools are opening in Newark, regardless of whether NPS wants them to or not. If I'm correct in my understanding, let's say the Hawthorne model, actually the Alexander and the Hawthorne model are areas where you can, I guess, mitigate the opening of these extra schools without having to incur what the cost would be if those schools opened up in other areas.
Yes, let me clarify, and then you can verify whether or not we're on the same page, if that would be okay. I can restate what I think your question was.
Sure.
So these are not extra. It's important to note these aren't extra seats or extra charter schools. We haven't worked with these charters to expand their growth plans. We're accommodating what's already been approved. Your comment about the state is extremely important because what you've noticed over the last 2 to 3 years is the state has slowed down significantly or become more rigorous in the approval process. So the charters, in terms of new operators coming online in the city, that hasn't been something that's happening. And so more reason for optimism on our end that through these very, very difficult and painful decisions we're making today, that we will truly achieve a stabilizing effect. The reason, the rationale to lead through these challenging times is to get to the other end, where we can truly stabilize both enrollment, staff, leadership, and resources throughout the district and begin to make the investments that we would have liked to have been made 15, 20 years ago back into the community. And so we think those are some key data points that you raise that give optimism that we're on the right track to achieving that.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for your time and for coming out. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you know that there are other families or parents that have questions, please encourage them to contact our contact center, to email, to access information that we have on the website. We are happy to answer any and all questions about anything that we presented today and other parts of our One Newark plan. So thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you all.